Or text me on the...
And we're live. Good evening, my whiskey brothers and sisters, and welcome to Book 2, first episode of the Alberta Scotch Society and Friends Whisky Book Club. As always, we're honored to have you, the viewer, and our panel with us tonight. You'll recognize most of them, and as always, we welcome new friends with us with open arms. I've been looking forward to tonight as we get to start a new chapter, so to speak, with our new book club, that one right there. Ralfy, Search for a Whiskey Bothy. And what's best is I get to spend my time with you most excellent people. So tonight we're doing chapters 1 to 3 specifically. And my whiskey brothers and sisters, or as Ralfy would say, my malt mates, we diverge a little bit from our path from Canadian whiskey that we've been doing the past 7 weeks. And I got to say, it feels a little bit odd not having Davin with us here tonight. But equally as exciting is the fact that we have Travis with us here tonight. So welcome, Travis. There he is,
right
there.
up there with Davin.
We traded up.
We traded, and it's not up or down. We're all here. And I'm hoping Davin's watching us right now, so you don't want to say that. For those of us, or those that are brand new to us, I'm going to explain a little bit what we're about. So first and foremost, we're lovers of whiskey and all things whiskey, which in this case right now revolves around reading. Well, and tasting whiskey at the same time. Second, it's about camaraderie. It's what comes together, us coming together to share a dram, to share a book, share an adventure, spend some time together. Tonight's dram will be this one right here. Ralfy's 2010 Whiskey of the Year, Bunnahabhain 12, and one that came in here, and this is the original 2012 that Ralfy actually liked. This is the one that he picked as his Whiskey of the Year. So graciously donated by Whiskey Ass, Kent, as we know him already. And we're going to compare these two tonight. So I'm going to encourage our panel to two-fist their whiskeys for the rest of the night until we start talking about them. And as you're two-fisting your whiskeys, think about what you like in each of them, maybe which one you like better, something like that. So, yeah, fantastic. So it'll be our aim to do this, everything that we have to do in about 30 minutes. But I'm going to tell you the truth, it's probably not going to happen because you know that I like to talk and hear my own voice, right? So we'll try to get to 30 minutes. And we will afterwards, like in all previous weeks, continue with our after dram. And let's go without further ado. Let's do the round table. We're going to hear from each one of our panel members, and they'll tell us their names and their handles. And I'll just shift the view from here, and we're going to start with Nick.
Hey, I'm Nick, and I'm Black Cat Whiskey on Instagram. And I'm two-fisting, as Dolph says tonight, both Bunna 12s.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And on to Don.
I'm Don. You can find me just about everywhere at the Whiskey Dive. Whiskey with an E, because, you know, America. Yep, Bunnahabhain 12. It's also my first time having it, so I'm really looking forward to this.
Excellent. And he bought it just for us. Well, he bought it.
I expedited my purchase for it just for this, yeah.
Beautiful. I love it.
Hi.
Dave, you're up.
It's Yukon Dave, Yukon Dave _EDM. And I've got 2 Bunna 12s here in my hand.
And waiting for it. We're here. And we're going to go to this young guy here.
I'm also two-fisting the 12s. Dolph and me did a tasting Monday night on these to actually figure out what the difference between the new and the old was. And we were amazingly shocked at how much difference there was. Everybody keeps saying that the 12 is a 12 is a 12. It is not a 12.
All righty. And this young guy.
This is we're going by Tweed Hat Travis today. Instagram, probably a few accounts at Rare Drams for Rare Drams Whiskeys and at Drams for Fams for the Drams for Fams charity whiskey tastings across North America. But tonight, just Tweed Hat Travis. And
And you know what?
I am doing the 18 versus the 12 tonight.
Wow,
Lovely.
they look really good.
And you can tell the color difference right now. You know which one it is, right? So
Quite
there's the
significant.
18, that dark. We love it.
Yeah.
And back to me. And as we know, I'm Dolph Shaw. I'm the president of the Alberta Scotch Society. I'm your host tonight. I'm at the Spirit of Yag here. I can click on my little thing. There's my banner. It's a long banner, and I'm thinking I should have shortened it up before I talked to everybody. But that's okay. Let's go up to get everyone's face on here. Let's get rid of me. And let's start it off. So, and we're going to start off like Ralfy starts it off. So he starts his book with his 4-year-old self. And his father lets him smell and taste a single malt. Ralfy said, he let me experience the first sour nip of ethanol accompanied by grain and honey. And also later he starts talking about rum when he gets into the dad's cabinet and how it's toffee, muscovado, vanilla, sweets, tobacco. And from his videos, we can assume that he's got a fantastic nose. There's no doubt about it. But I wonder if he actually thought that he tasted cereal, grain, oatmeal, and honey at 4. I don't know. So I'm throwing that out there. Maybe he did. But let's get a show of hands from our panel here. I'm wondering, and I'm looking down instead. I just kind of want to see whose hands. How many of you had an experience where mom or dad let you try something that you probably shouldn't have had at that point in time of your life?
Yeah.
Oh, we're about fit? No, and not Dave. Dave,
I
I
had to
thought.
help myself.
Okay. He stole it. He didn't care. Done. Ralfy also talks about the Rose Bank. So his father has this really special bottle. And I'm quoting him again. I just don't know why, but at such a young age, I connected with the bottle in a way I could simply not understand. So I want to ask our panel, are there any bottles that you were just drawn to? Maybe not the spirit, but the bottle and the shape and the color itself. So I'll leave that up to you guys. What do you think?
Can I answer this with a beer answer?
No.
Okay.
We're doing scotch. Beer rep. Stop it.
Well, I've grown up.
Okay.
Kind of.
Do a beer one, Dave. Go ahead.
My first trip to Montana, we bought tons of these things. These are great. This is what got me to where I am today.
Kegs and beer.
Yeah.
Anyone else with a beautiful bottle of scotch or whiskey of some type?
Now, are you referring to from a young age or
No,
just you saw it
something
and you had to have it?
Yeah.
So for me, that would be Old Pulteney 12.
Okay.
And I've talked about Old Pulteney 12 many, many times. But I still remember walking down the liquor aisle, seeing the fishing trolley on the front. And I grew up in a fishing village in Long Island, New York. So I kind of have like anything that's Atlantic Ocean and fishing, I tend to have a little bit of a connection with. So I bought it solely on the labeling, tried it, and I will forever have a bottle of it on my shelf.
Excellent.
It just takes me back to childhood.
Yeah.
Was that your first?
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. It was not. My first whiskey was probably around the time as Ralfy's,
At
but
4. Okay.
maybe 5.
Okay.
My dad gave me a sip for the the cynical side effect of it. Yeah, my experience was nowhere near what his was. I still wanted to just play outside. I didn't want to go explore more, and all I remember was this is hot and this hurts. Yeah, that was my experience.
Nick, do you have a bottle that you saw? Just beautiful bottle. You had to have it?
Bowmore Darkest, and it's because of the memories tied with it.
Okay.
I took my parents to Scotland for a month and their tours, and Bowmore was the first distillery we stayed at, and we actually stayed at the cottages. So it's really got a lot of memories tied to it. So Bowmore has always played a big part in my life, and it was one of those sort of first drams I can remember buying on my own as well when I became of age.
Okay. Still drawn to it. And Kent?
Oh, young age. I have a constant memory of my dad used to drink Pilsner, and I love that label to this day. Not really fussy for the beer now, but back then I actually quite enjoyed the odd sip that he would give us on a hot summer day. Nowadays, I can't say any one bottle. I have many bottles that I'm drawn to. Packaging is always a great thing, but I'm more interested what's in the bottle than what's on it.
Travis.
So first drink I can remember my dad giving me was beer at the horse races because I had a hiccups or a stomach ache. I can't remember. But he gave me a couple sips of beer and said, don't worry, that'll make you feel better. First whiskey, I was not 4 or 5. The first whiskey I can remember was Lagavulin 16. I was 16 years old, and it was the night before my father's best friend's funeral. We had a cigar in the living room, and he poured me a dram, a Lagavulin 16. And that was my first ever whiskey. I cannot tell you if I remember liking it or not, to be honest. There's a big gap in memories from about 16 to 28. First bottle I fell in love with, whiskey bottle, and me and my brother bought one more of these. It's Compass Box Hedonism Quindecimus. And this is our second bottle, and the only time I'm allowed to have a dram is when my brother's here and we each have a little sip, and it just sits there until he comes back. But the Compass Box bottles, I think, are some of the best in the industry. Whether or not you pay a little bit more for them, I think they do a fantastic job.
All right. And I'm going to add my part to it. Actually, I'm going to answer Jason McDaddy. What's with the hats tonight? And if we've read Ralfy, we've seen these types of hats before. So these are fantastic. And if you want to, we could get a little picture of Ralfy. You can see his little hat up there. We're trying to emulate that for a bit. It's going to get warm. I'll probably take mine off in a bit. But
most likely.
It was really last minute, Ethan.
And for me, the bottles that I liked the most that always appealed to me were Brook Laddie, because I love the frosted glass look. And the thick bottles with the frosted glass, I like the look. And I love the spirit inside too, and that kind of draws me towards it as well. And just about any Compass Box, I love the Compass Boxes, and they spend a lot of money on the art, and it shows, right? I like that. And Glenn Farkless 105 from G Weezy, that was his.
Ooh, that's a great one.
That's a nice one. Yeah.
Yeah, good with that. Yeah.
Fantastic. And we're off. So, how's that for the first start? Went well?
Yeah, went pretty good.
Good. All right. So, what do we think of this comment right here? Adventures need discomfort. And I did this specifically for Travis, because Travis, this right here is a new adventure for you. And is it uncomfortable, or was it uncomfortable before you started? And maybe still is. Up to you.
Well, the funny part about this, Dolph, is my wife was in a book club 6 years ago with a bunch of my friends' wives, and we actually started the Edmonton Scotch Club because we didn't want to be in a book club. And here we are 6 years later, and I am now back in a book club. So I might get in some trouble now. She'll be like, you could have just had a book club all along.
Well, maybe she'll get into another whiskey thing and start something herself.
Well, they have a No Way Rosé club that they've started just as an anti-Scotch club. So they have shirts. Actually, it's Wild Rosé Country, I think, is the shirts that they have. So they got their own thing going.
Okay, good. Everyone's happy then.
In the background,
the rest of our panel. Think back to before we started, what you were expecting and what we did over the last 7 weeks with Dav and Canadian whiskey. Was it uncomfortable? And did it become an adventure because it was uncomfortable?
I would say yes. I mean, we had the author of the book with us present every single week.
Yeah.
We're reading his writings. We're talking about everything that we're reading while essentially the teacher's in the room. Yeah. So all of our critiques, now granted, it's probably been the most educational experience I've had that's been kind of in like more uncomfortable situation.
Yeah.
Because, we all like whiskey. We're all whiskey enthusiasts. And now we're getting inside information essentially from someone who spent years studying the subject.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of intimidating, which form of uncomfort, but yeah, it turned out to be, like I said, the most educational experience I've had. And I've learned more information from having Davin present with us than I ever would have gotten just by reading his book.
Yeah. And that
Yeah,
got really
definitely.
popular in the States with Oprah, right? Because her clout, she would bring on anyone she wanted to.
Yeah.
And they would ask the author right there whatever they wanted. So we were blessed to have Davin. And you know what? In 4 weeks, we're going to have him again. So it's going to be great. So Whiskey Throttle, how you doing, buddy? All right,
So can I just say, as an outsider that was watching those book clubs, I was watching from the outside, and I thought you guys all did a fantastic job. Just the way you guys interacted with Davin, and kudos to Davin for just being like, yeah, I'll do this, and just being willing to come and talk to a group of whiskey enthusiasts. I thought you guys did a great job as an outsider. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, for me, I didn't have the book right away, so I know how Nick's feeling right now. I told I told Dolph, I said, well, I don't have the book. Oh, don't worry. You won't be put on the spot. First question, Dolph says, okay, Dave, what do you think of this? I thought, well, fuck, I'm screwed. This is like high school all over again. I didn't do my homework.
I remember that night.
But after that, after Davin gave me a scolding, and then everything after that went smooth, and it was great. It was a great experience. Yeah.
All right. Perfect.
I have to echo what Don said. It was uncomfortable in the sense of, we have the author who has all this knowledge, and how could we even ask questions and not sound completely foolish? I know that was running through my head. I'm like, well, I'm going to ask this. Let's see how much of a fool I'm going to make of myself. Questions, and then am I going down a complete rabbit hole? And Davin was so amazing about how he interacted. He's like, no, that's a great question. Or he let us go down.
He liked it.
And it's like,
he did that to you,
cool.
but the rest of us, he was a little bit mean sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
That's the look you got. And Dave was saying that he was looking straight at me. Well, he's doing that there, but it was good.
And my whole thing was, I didn't know Davin. I've met him before, but you meet a guy in a crowd, it's not a big deal. And then, of course, we're testing him because he wrote a book. Great. What does he know? Well, shit, this guy knows, and everything he knew, which really impressed me.
Excellent.
So he passed every test we threw at him.
Yeah.
He did. All right. Back to Ralfy.
Okay.
We're going back to Ralfy. Ralfy writes about what I call the perfect storm of scotch. And this is the quote from him. The caliber of the event does not pass me by, and I see the connection of sight, sound, smell, and taste in perfect accord, harmonious with the growing wave of nostalgia. So, does anyone have an experience like this when the whiskey seemed perfect at the perfect time?
Most nights.
Yeah, probably. I'll go on this one here right away. I'm learning to be a peat guy, and I was at a Christmas party for a friend of mine, and every year he has a different spirit on the bar. And the last spirit of the night was the Ardbeg Dark Cove, and I could smell it from across the room. And I said to the guy, "I'm not going to like this, but it's Christmas and everybody's having a great time." And they poured it. I sampled it. Oh my God, this is delicious. So I ended up buying 3 bottles of it, and it's really, I don't think you can find it anymore. So that's my reference point in time. That is, yeah. If I'm having a shitty night and if it's blowing and snowing and they got the fireplace going, it's an Ardbeg Dark Cove that's coming out.
Excellent. And stop swearing, Dave. It's like the 1 F-bomb and 4
What the F?
Stop it. Anyone else with the perfect dram? Like, it just all comes together. For me, it depends on the people around me, but I'm throwing that up for you guys.
Yeah.
Dolph, we got an opportunity to do a tasting with Ashok Chikalingham with Jay Wheelock present. Jay Wheelock brought Ashok, and We had Ashok with just him and 25 to 30 of us. And Ashok created Amroot Spectrum 05, which was the first Amroot Spectrum release. And we had tucked a bottle away. And we also tucked a bottle away of Greedy Angels 10, which was about an $800 bottle. Drinking in a room with 30 people, and Ashok Chikalingham, the global brand ambassador of the year, the guy who created the whiskey, and sipping on a whiskey that he was so proud of, and seeing him talk about it just with this element of like, this is my creation, this is my baby, and seeing a room full of people appreciate that whiskey. I will never forget drinking both the Amroot Spectrum 05 and the Greedy Angels 10 with Ashok Chikalingham, who's now the distillery manager, I believe, present in the room. That's one of those moments I will never forget.
And it sounds so cool. Wish I would have been there.
Yeah.
All right. So in the span of a couple pages now, Ralfy goes from buying one single bottle of Bunnahabhain 12.
Yep.
All right. To starting his collection with a gift from Sanny's widow. So Sanny's someone he meets in the first bar, or you'll read the book, you'll see what happens in the bar. He meets this guy. He passes away. The widow passes on 4 bottles to him. So he's got the Talisker 10, the Auchentoshan 21, Macallan 18, Royal Salute 21. So that's what he starts his big collection with, right? Do you remember what you started your collection with, and how many of them may be at this beginning? And I'd like to hear from absolutely everybody. So Nick, I'm going to put you on the spot and put you up right away.
The first bottle I can remember buying was Talisker 12. It was just a whiskey I love drinking. But as to where Ralfy, he started to accumulate a lot of bottles in a short period of time. Mm-hmm. For me, it wasn't right after that Talisker 12. I'd buy a couple bottles and I'd drink them. It was after actually the Fort McMurray fire, and I was helping his house because he lost all his whiskey. So we were out hunting for Josh, and I'm like, well, if I'm buying for Josh, and I bought a lot of whiskey in that time period.
Yeah,
a lot of whiskey.
John, you're next.
Oh boy. So I got big into whiskey when I was in college, and it all started with Crown and Canadian Club. Go figure. And then it kind of started to move forward with the Johnny Walkers. I got Johnny Walker Double Black from like our bulk store, so it was cheap. And then I slowly started to accumulate more like the, I guess, higher priced Crowns, because I knew I liked it, so I was going to just experiment more with that. But when I moved from Florida to Washington, that's kind of where my collection went from like 4 bottles to, I don't know, I think it's close to 150. I'm glad my wife's not here. But
she'll hear this later.
Yeah. But I jumped a lot more into bourbons. I mean, I always liked bourbon, but Woodford Reserve, and then I started expanding from there. And then Scotch kind of came into the picture, and that the Scotch section exploded, and then I got curious about other countries, and now I have a bottle from like 5 other countries outside of the generic 6 known countries for whiskey. But yeah.
All right. Thank you, sir. And I'm going over to Yukon Dave.
All right. What was the question?
I'm going over to Dave. No, I'll go back. The thing was, what did you ever have no.
So I came into this late, and I had to learn because we started making whiskey, and I started trying those little tiny sample bottles that you can buy in the stores for, $3 of Canadian whiskey. And I didn't like it. And the boss says, you're drinking the wrong thing. And then I tried that Ardbeg, and I thought, oh my God. And everything started from that. I said, I want one of those. So I bought 3 of them, and then it just started. And this whole thing with Davin for the last 7 weeks, I got all kinds of Canadian whiskey now. I want one of those. So
as soon as you see it, yeah.
Well,
I'm there with you. All right, Travis, you're up.
I would say, and probably like a lot of people that where we're at now in terms of being whiskey nerds or enthusiasts, we are now at a level where we're looking for weird stuff. But when you first start building your collection, for me, I was at Superstore. I was at, this places, you're not at Keg and Cork or Chateau Louis or Sherb. You're at wherever you can get cheap whiskey. So I was like Glendronach 12, which I still think is a great 12-year-old standard go-to whiskey. Balvenie Doublewood, which I tell a lot of people if they say, I'm looking for a whiskey, I'm getting into it. And I'll say, try Balvenie Doublewood. There's nothing offensive about it. It's a reasonable price. And then I actually went to the Bothy on 124th Street before it closed down. And I had a dram of Auchentoshan Valinch. It was the first Auchi Valinch. And it tasted like creamsicles. I can remember the taste to this day. And it was amazing. And then like 3 months later, I bought a bottle and it was a completely different whiskey. And I found out later it was a different batch. And that was where I learned about batch variations. But that first Auchentoshan Valinch at the Bothy, I will tell you that it was one of my favorite whiskey memories of all time because it felt like I was drinking creamsicles in my mouth. But those would be the first couple. I wouldn't spend more than $50, $60 a bottle at first.
I don't think any of us really did too much.
Yeah, that's 100
and
years
plus
ago.
they were a lot cheaper then too.
Totally. Yeah.
How about yours, buddy?
Oh, both me and the wife were Brook Laddie fans back in the day. We started with 2 or 3 and moved into about a dozen of them. And then we were like, well, what are all these other bottles? So we started going out to tastings and tasting after tasting. And we went from a half a dozen to a dozen bottles into 100 bottles in probably about a year. And then, wow. Oh, yeah. One of the favorite.
Wow. That's awesome.
It is empty, unfortunately, but this is the one that really kicked us off. It was actually a Christmas gift from my brother-in-law, and we scoured Alberta looking for another bottle of this. But again, by the time he bought it, it sat on the shelf for 3 months, and then it was just gone. We went through everything Brook Laddie had, and we still have a fondness for it, but we hardly ever go back to it anymore because there's so many great flavors out there. And it was probably about a year after we started doing all our tastings. I came across an Ardbeg tasting and kind of fell in love. And then a couple years ago, I went to Springbank, and then this guy named Travis bought. He introduced me to this rare dram stuff, and Blind and Thinker.
I apologize, Kent.
Apologize.
It's all good,
man. It's a good idea. And for me, it was actually it was Taster's Kit, and it was at Liquor Select on 149th. I lived on 149th Street, one of the small apartments there. And so we'd go there, and I was eyeing their whiskey wall for a long time. I didn't know anything about it. So I think my wife actually got me the little sample packs from the different regions from Diageo. Does anyone remember this? This is like late 80s, early 90s. If anyone ever saw them. And I went through the pack, and the one I liked the most was Dalwhinnie 15. But then I was thinking, I want something a little bit more powerful. So my first bottle I bought was the Oban 14, which was more powerful than that at the time. And for me, I always drank the bottle, finished the bottle before opening the other one. And it wasn't until I came back from teaching in Europe that when I had different types of scotches there, which were pretty cool, that I got into buying probably too much. But that was it. So it's the Oban 14s. But
so
talking
question,
about
how many bottles do people have open right now?
All of them.
Yeah, well, roughly. How many bottles is that?
Over 40.
Yeah, I'm in between 60 and
Over
80.
40.
And I think it's a good idea because when they're open, it forces us to share them. And when things are open, they come over. It's always, let's give you a sample of this. Let's send you home with that. I think with them being open, it kind of encourages us to be more social and more giving. I think.
I do keep a can of inert gas, like argon or whatever it is. The wine can. I keep one of those for when bottles get a little bit lower, I'll spray some in that, cork it
No,
up.
I think that's a good idea. I bought it, but I haven't done it because usually I get the same mindset when it gets too low. I finish it or I put it into my Millennium bottle. Right.
Yeah.
But this, my friends, is the time of night where we are going to talk about the whiskey of the year. So 2010, Ralfy puts out his very first whiskey of the year. I think it was a 10-minute video. It's usually quite a bit more. And he was sweeping up he was in his bothy, sweeping things up. And he talked about this, the Bunnahabhain 12 being the whiskey of the year. Now, we've got two. I've got mine, which is the original that Kent gave us. Some of us, he wasn't able to get it to all of us. And then the other 12 is it came out, I think it was 3 years ago. Is anyone out there that could help me find out when exactly this came out? I think it's 2.5, 3 years ago that the new one came out. Do we have any opinions?
2018, the new one was released.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Kent, I'm going to put you on the spot for a second, and I'm going to have you talk about what happened on Instagram earlier this week, and then the rest of us, I'll ask about your opinions on it. Oh, you're not, Kent. Sorry.
He's not paying attention.
I'm looking at the bottle.
Earlier this week, Dolphin and me had an Instagram that went way too long. Well, actually, we got sampling the one that he was whiskey of the year, and it's got a nice gold label on it. Unfortunately, my camera's not great, but the new one is a more of a red label and stuff like that. We were talking with a few people, and they're saying, well, 12 is a 12 is a 12. And they keep the same blend going and going. So we decided to taste these, and we discovered they're not even close to being the same. The original one, we both basically said it's an older whiskey, a lot more almond, hazelnut, richer, older whiskey. The new one is more like a new oak, and it's younger. It's a lot fresher and stuff like that. I actually didn't care for the new 12 as much as I like the old 12, having tasted them side by side. Had I not known to taste them side by side, the new 12 is pretty delicious. Your thoughts?
All right. Thank you, sir. And we're going up with this. Anyone agree, disagree, agree, and disagree with Kent and I? And this is what it looks like. This is the new one. Kent, if you want to put yours up so that people can see a side by side. So Kent's the one that Ralfy actually liked. This one here is the new one.
Can I just say my 2 cents, Dave? Because I just talked about that Auchentoshan and Valinch variation between batch 1 and batch 2.
Yeah,
you guys have clearly picked out, and I would actually expect the Bunna 12s to be more close year to year than a special release like the Valinch. But I think what it highlights to me is how hard it is as a master blender at a distillery to continuously recreate the exact same whiskey with a whole bunch of casks, a whole bunch of variable factors. And I think that's what makes it fantastic. And I'm collecting Springbank 15s right now from different releases.
Okay.
And Springbank 12s as well. I would love to just explore this more, because I think this is what makes it, like, everyone thinks it's the same, and you guys have just clearly shown it's not, and they're not even that far apart in age in terms of release dates, right? So I think it's great that you guys did this.
Yeah, this one started basically 2010, and it went up to late 17, early 18 is when they discontinued this and went to the new version that Dolph has. But even going back to the Springbanks, did you do their barley release 9 and 10?
Yeah. Oh, totally different whiskeys. Yeah.
Not even similar, and I mean it's the same field that they're plowing on, right?
Yeah.
So even year to year on the barley. So how do you make your whiskey taste the same year to year?
But I think it's fair to point out that, like you said, they side by side you notice the difference, but you still thought the new one was good. It's not a matter of better or worse. They're just they're different. There's changes in so many different factors. And I think that's what nerds like us like to talk about, is just what made it so different, right?
This one's better.
And
I like the
I
bottle.
had to keep coming back and forth when we were doing our Instagram, but this one is good, and it's a younger spirit, and you can tell it doesn't have the finish, but it's got more punch in the front. And but he kept going back to it, and I agreed with them that it is better. But I do appreciate this one as well.
There is absolutely nothing wrong with the new 12. It is absolutely delicious, but when you put them side by side, I'll take the older one.
Well,
Yeah,
now you've got a reference here. You got
Exactly.
two 12-year-olds 9 years apart.
Yep.
And all it needs is a little bit of variation every year for 9 years, and it's got to change.
But it's not even 9 years, because the best I can tell, my bottling date on this is about 1 year before they switched to the new 12.
Okay.
It might be
so it
two,
might have been 2 or something like that before, right?
yeah, I figure mine is probably about a 16,
Adult.
17.
Yeah, Nick. Nick?
Oh, Nick froze.
Oh, she's
Yeah.
frozen.
You should reach out to Mike Breezebaugh.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I
I
would
actually
love
wanted
to
talk to him.
actually do that very soon. He's a if no one knows about Mike, and you could talk about him more because you've been following him a little bit longer, but I went to it was a tasting, it was a Bunnahabhain tasting, and someone's going to have to correct me on it, but I fell in love with Chenebeth is what I call it. Someone tell me how to pronounce it. It's the peated Bunnahabhain. Kobana, thank
I
you.
think it's Kobana, right, Nick? Is that right?
Cabana.
Cabana.
Here, I'll
Yeah,
prove it.
Cabana. Batch 2,
Cabana.
1, or 3.
Yeah, batch 1 is one of my favorite peated Bunas ever. It's incredible.
That
I
being
love
said,
it a lot.
3 is pretty amazing itself.
I
That's
agree.
what I
Nick
have here.
would be someone to talk to, and maybe he's got an in there somewhere that we could actually talk about it.
But Dolph, is this not something Ralfy probably would have been on about? Is that the whiskey making over the years, and I've tasted a 12-year-old Highland Park that was distilled in 1988 versus the 12-year-old current, is things had to speed up or slow down according to the demands of the time, right? So like right now, we're in a whiskey boom. Everyone is making as much whiskey as fast as possible.
That's
but
right.
maybe that batch of Buna, things were slower and they maybe distilled a little slower and they fermented a little bit longer, and things were just little tweaks that made a difference that we could pick out that maybe not everybody else can pick out, but side by side you can, right?
Yeah, and unless you are side by side, if I had one week and the other one a week after, it'd be really hard to do that.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's the joy of being able to do what you guys are doing, is you're tasting whiskeys from 2 different times, which is
Well,
very cool.
When you look at it, these are the youngest whiskey in here is 12. We don't know what the rest of the whiskey is.
Yeah.
That is
And
cool.
we determined that, well, we thought the other one were hitting 18 or 19 or 20 in the one Kent had previously. And this one we were thinking maybe it's 12, 13, 14. But beyond that, we're going to talk a little bit more about Ralfy, because just the whiskeys of the year. I just want to bring this up now. And he brings it up in chapter 3, that what makes things important to him. And when he picked his whiskeys of the year, they're all non-chill filtered. They had no color added. He was always in the search for authenticity, something that was distilled there and actually matured there. He liked that a lot as well. And noticing how whiskey changes, the oxygenation. But the other component, and he doesn't bring this up until not even the next year, I can't remember, it's like 2012 or 13 whiskey of the year, that he wanted a whiskey that was available to people, where you could actually go out and buy it, as opposed to, say, a Jim Murray who will pick a bottle, and there might be 2,000 bottles in the United States you can get your hands on. So he always wanted to pick something that people could get their hands on, which I appreciated. So I like that part a lot. So kind of a kudos to him for that.
Well, I think one of the things you have to understand is as soon as you say whiskey of the year, people are going to rush out and buy it. So
Yep.
you're right, available. I can't
Well, and
imagine how
especially with Ralfy, he's got 200,000 people following him every week when he puts something out.
I'd like to see what the sales jump was the day after he said that.
Yeah.
And I've taken to, because I had the collection behind me, and I was finding the bottles. It was quite hard to find some of the bottles we got, and it was because of that, unless you bought it right away. But other ones, like Ardbeg 10, they're not going to run out of Ardbeg 10, and that was one of his favorites in the year. The Bruichladdich 10, you're not going to run out of that one. It was some of the other ones a little bit harder. The Revival that we have in 3 weeks.
Yep.
But he still had that consideration, which I like. All right, so
Probably batch variations, right, Dolph? From the year he announces his favorite is going to be different from 3 years later, just like Crown Royal Northern Harvest after Jim Murray, right?
Well, I think that one batch, and we talked about that last week, that they don't think that there's a very big variation in those whatsoever. But Ralfy does do his things. He did 3 actual on the Bunnahabhain 12. He's done 3 different podcasts on it or broadcasts because he knows they change. And not only that, our tastes change. So that's why he does or goes back over them again. That, and he's got 1,000 videos and he's got to revisit some stuff anyway sometime, I think. Right? All right, so
and
back to
the Crown Royal. They have about
the
10
level
people.
of hatred, animosity that Ralfy had with the banks. All right, so here's the quote. Page 29. I will never forget nor forgive the brazen usury and inhumanity of this system and the people who enable it. Mortgage, more being death, and gage, grip. A mortgage is a death grip in Latin. So those were pretty strong words. And I wish Ralfy was here to expand upon that. So Ralfy, if you're out there, if you can type in the comments, it'd be really nice. But alas.
He's probably sound asleep by now.
Well,
What,
it's 8
hours
hours
ahead of
ahead, right? So, yeah, I'm assuming he's asleep. But maybe we would change our time. We would go on at 11 o'clock in the morning if Ralfy would come on with us. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
Totally.
obviously, he had a bad experience with the bank. Because you don't go on a travel like that if you never met the guys.
Yeah. And I was wondering about my wife because she's reading it at the same time and she's a banker. So I was thinking that was a little rough on her, but she's tough. She's got tough skin.
Well,
right.
when you get a chance, when we're sitting down, ask me about my dollar store experience.
And the bank?
Yeah, Ralphie and I could kind of sound the same on that.
Okay. We shall, kind sir.
Next week, Dave, over dram.
Dolph, I told you.
Or the post after dram when everyone's gone and we're still up at 1 o'clock.
There you go.
Yeah.
So from something we may understand, hating a bank, to something most of us understand, here's a quote. I mentioned the bank thing simply to introduce to you what I did next. I bought whiskey. Lots and lots of it. In fact, my purchasing became obsessive. And over the next 2 years, I had a collection of 250 unopened bottles. I had a period like this as well. And my wife's chuckling in the back. I think I'm still in the period 6 years ago. Has anyone else had one of those periods where it was just, I'm going to buy and buy and buy, and everything seemed so exciting, you just went for it?
No, not me.
Nick's like, yeah.
Well,
Nick's like, is now still a period?
Yeah,
like,
according to
2
my
weeks
wife,
from now, still a period.
Last week,
For
next
me,
week,
as soon as I get home, I got to get it open. Like if I could drink it in the parking lot, I would have.
Well, Dave is a brand ambassador, and often he actually tries things on. Okay, so I think you have the perfect situation. You're there, you know the people, Dave. You could actually convince them to crack open a bottle, and especially if you go, they would be happy to do that with you.
Most of my purchases I've tried and liked.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's very few times do I buy something that I don't know about, because I don't want to give anybody my money if I'm not happy with it.
Yeah.
Once you open it, you can't get it back.
Dolph,
How about you, Don? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead,
for
Don.
it.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to ask Don, but go ahead, Travis. We'll go to you first.
Yeah.
I was just saying I worked at Keg and Cork, which we all know very well in Edmonton, for about 8 months.
Mhm.
And I always said to my wife, I just spend my paycheck. It was a part-time job. I just did it on the side. I said, I spend all my paycheck at Keg and Cork, but it was like the way I paid for whiskey. But I can guarantee you I spent twice as much of my – if you're in a liquor store for 8 hours, My shopping cart at the end of every shift would be like beers, and I'd always make sure to throw in a bottle of rosé for my wife, which is a veteran move for anybody out there.
Yeah.
But you would just it's so hard. You were walking around and you're like, yeah, I want this. And that was when I really got heavy, and I got a staff discount, for crying out loud. Like, what do you do?
Yeah, you got to try a lot of stuff that the public never got to.
Totally. And there's reps coming in and you're trying. Anyways, that was my biggest spending period. Not that to say that it has slowed down that much.
Okay.
Sorry, Don, I interrupted you.
Oh, no, you're good. I was kind of spaced out for a second, but by you speaking, my wife is now opening up a bottle of rosé. So,
The power of suggestion. I love.
yeah. So I guess for me, like, I had a small little period of it, and then I realized how horrible my state's syntax is. So it kind of keeps you in check real fast when, you know, a quarter of the price of the bottle you're paying in tax. Yeah, 20.5% syntax plus a liter tax. So, you know, it makes a $30 bottle pretty pricey pretty quick. And that's even if you want to go and buy a few. So, you know, it's more like, yeah, I had a little period where I bought a couple bottles at a time, or, you know, something came in and I wasn't even looking for it, but I walked in, someone flashed a Weller in front of me. I walked out with a Weller and something else. But yeah, we all have that period. We get excited about something. We want to explore everything about it. It turns into an educational period. And we want to feel like we know something. And as you do it, you start to know something, and then you share it, you get nerdy, and then you join a book club and you have 7 new whiskeys in 2 weeks. So
Or more. I think we had more than that.
I pre-bought. I looked ahead in the chapters. Remember, I wrote out the Excel. So
Yes. No one else used it, but it was a fantastic idea.
but sorry.
All right. So at this point, Ralfy's buying lots of whiskey, but he's also in search of a place to buy his whiskey, the perfect place. So he wants knowledgeable staff. He wants a good experience. He doesn't want too many people in the store. He wants to be made feel special. He wants people to give him samples to make him feel special. So he buys the samples. I'm wondering where this place is for our people on the panel. Is there a first place or a place now, whatever you want, that actually does that for you?
So real quick, nice fedora change, by the way. I noticed exceptionally more light in the lower left corner of my screen. I don't necessarily feel like Ralfy was using the store to get the samples. I feel like it was just a moment of opportunity. You know,
bonding, maybe. Who knows?
Exactly. So in this hobby, it's all networking, it's all rapport building, and it's all establishing a comfort with people that you want to buy, because, you know, you walk into a liquor store and just about everyone there doesn't work for the product you're buying,
right?
But they still have to sell it. So if you can establish a rapport with someone, and then start to find out what they like, you can get better. You could get better opportunities from the store. But yeah, if here in Washington, you can go into Total Wine and they can pour you a little sample. Primarily, it's a spirits direct, so it's stuff bottled for Total Wine that they'll pour for you. And obviously, that's just all marketing and business for them. But it can get you into the general area of something you might want to try, or something you never considered. And you try, and it's like, oh, you know what? This is a lot better than I expected, because it's not the main run of the line from that, you know, distillery, or, you know, whatever else you're trying. But then you do that, and now you have a sales associate that essentially has your ear. And then you can start talking to them and establishing your own little personal connection, to the point where you walk in and you're no longer being pitched the, you know, high profit margin for that store, and you're getting pitched stuff that they would actually buy for themselves, not because they have to make the sale. And that becomes a better experience in the long run, because then you can walk in and not get pitched the same bottle every time, because they need to up their sales for that. I don't know. The tasting helps. You get to try stuff, you get to buy stuff, but it's all who you get to talk to, I think, at the end of the day.
I always like to be sold. Like, explain to me why I'm going to give you money. Like, show me something. You go, oh yeah, this is real good. Here's my money. Like, it's a pretty easy transaction for me. And so I've got 2 stores in town that have 1 million different samples open, and I'm looking for something, and they go, okay, I've got these 3. You want to try? Yeah, okay, I'll take that. I go in when I'm buying. I don't ask for samples and all the time. I take a sample when I'm ready to spend some money. I don't want to waste their time.
Yeah, exactly.
I do, and I want their stuff, all of it. Nick, where's your favorite place right now? Or where was it when you first started, Nick?
You know what? I actually didn't have a favorite place. I ran into the lovely challenge that women always have when they're in the whiskey world, of being ignored when they walk into the whiskey section. But that's for most women. That's the reality. You walk into a store and they look at the man behind you, or if you're with a man, it's like, oh, sir, what would you like? And it's like, no, I'm buying, or I'm not buying it as a gift. I'm drinking. So it's that frustration. For me, I got to learn the reps so I could tell them what I was interested in looking for. And reps were much more interested in talking to me than salespeople, because they're like, you're going to spend and you want to spend money. Let me sell you something.
And we go to enough
And that
tastings
for me,
that we see a lot of reps. Right?
and that's for me is bigger. It's not so much the stores. The stores help facilitate the transaction. It's the reps reaching out to me and saying, independent bottle coming in. I think you mentioned this the one time we had coffee, that you like this distillery. It's in, there's a 13-year-old. I'm like, done, sold. Because they remembered I had mentioned I liked the distillery.
All right.
I like
Top now.
when you're out with the reps and stuff like that, because Nicole's got such amazing nose and stuff like that. She likes to tune the reps in.
Well, coming from the beer side, I always said that the ladies have better taste buds than the guys.
Oh, they do.
Yeah,
The same thing must happen in whiskey.
Travis, do you have a favorite place now? Because tell us a bit about what you do for a brand ambassador. So I know your role is a little bit different, but as a customer, do you have a favorite place, or the type of place, if you don't want to name anybody?
Well, I mean, I worked at Kencork for 8 months as a side job. I was walking along the whiskey wall there, and they said, "You're here so much, you should just get a job here." And I said, "Sure, I'll work here." And I got paid minimum wage to sell whiskey to people, and I loved it. It was a fun. It was not a. It was. I didn't have to pay rent based on my income, so for me, it was just. I just wanted to talk to people. I met Nicole there. I probably met most of you there, I would think, at some point.
That's where I met you, yeah.
Yeah, and so for me, and after reading this part of the book, I reminded myself of, I remember Saturdays at Kencork where people would come in and walk along the whiskey wall. And Nicole, I know that you've had issues with stuff in the past. I remember when people would walk into that whiskey wall, I would be so excited, and I would go over to them and I would immediately say, "Do you want to try something? Do you want to try a dram?" Because we always had whiskeys open. And I feel like this is something not utilized enough in the industry. Like, if someone's in your shop looking at whiskey, offer them a whiskey that you want them to buy, and there's probably a 50% chance that they're going to buy that whiskey. But no one does it. And I was like, this seems like a really easy thing for me to do. I'm just going to offer them a whiskey. I have whiskey here. So I would just say, "Do you want a dram?" And I would give them a dram, and they could just look at whiskeys while sipping a whiskey. It seems simple. I agree with Ralfy in that when you go to a whiskey shop, I hate when I go to a whiskey shop and someone comes to me and they just assume that I know nothing. And they're like, "Hey, you like whiskey? You want to try this whiskey?" Talk to the person that's buying the whiskey. Find out what it is that they know before you assume that they know nothing, because it's like the biggest slap in the face to just assume that you don't know what you're talking. And I'm like, I know more about whiskey than you, but I would love to talk to you about it. But you don't want to do that. You just want to sell me whiskey. Like, let's just talk. I think that's my biggest thing about it. If you're working at a whiskey shop, don't assume, just start asking questions and talk. And don't worry about selling. The selling will happen. Trust me, we all will buy all of your whiskey.
And I'm going to agree with that. And not just at a whiskey. Let's say, and I've done this, and I've worked the tables for Dave for Yukon Brewing. So when we're serving at a whiskey tasting itself, not just at a store, I'm not selling his product. I'm talking about the product I like a lot. So it's a little bit different when you're approached by someone and you don't think you're being snowed. You just know that they like it and they're talking to you about how things go. And I think Ralfy was in that first store where the guy that actually told him to buy or if you wanted to buy a ticket to a tasting. Do we remember that part of the book? Yeah. That's the first guy that started talking to him about whiskey, and he started respecting him because of that and kept going back to that store. And then he branched out away from that store. For me, it was Keg and Cork, and it was Dave that's there now. Not our Yukon Dave, but Dave at Keg and Cork. There's so many Daves out there. But who introduced me to it, and it was because I'd go everywhere. And in Edmonton, we have Chateau Louis, which many of us go to. Yeah. We go to Sherbrooke, many of us. Many of us go to what used to be called Unwind, which will now be Whiskey Drop. I went to Vines right at the very beginning as well. And these were fantastic places, but I was hopping back and forth. And it wasn't until you start opening yourself up too. And it's not just the salespeople. It's if you're out there to buy whiskey and you want a new experience, go to your local store. Start talking to the people there, get a relationship with them. You'll find out about tastings. You'll see more things. And then you start buying way too much whiskey. However, it's a fantastic experience. I think we should all do.
I've always hated the word salesman. I don't want to sell you anything that you don't want. Yeah. Either you like it or you don't. And it doesn't bother me one way or the other.
Dave, we had an event last night with Dolph and the Alberta Scotch Society, and I said to people, I will tell you if I don't like one of my own whiskeys. I am not going to lie to you because I'm a whiskey guy. I don't want you to buy a whiskey that I say is good and then you not like it and say it's terrible. And I want to stand behind what I'm saying. And that's the people at each of these stores. Could you imagine Ralfy going into a store and a guy trying to convince him that a terrible whiskey is a good whiskey? Ralfy would have lost it.
Well, that's the problem is if you lose the confidence of the consumer, you get one shot. Yeah. And if they're gone, they're gone.
Yeah. And we lose faith in you. It's not going to happen. Yeah. All right, guys. I'm going to wrap it. I'm going to finish off with this. Okay. And this is a quote from Ralfy as well, a couple quotes. So, you see, that's the problem with discovering the best, is that the rest before and after diminish a little from the new experience. So what do you think of this quote by Ralfy as well? It's not the unreasonable or the unerasable memory forged from smell and taste over time, two of our most subjective and instinctive senses, which leave powerful signals of recollections in our mind and the archives, but also those rare moments of exotic location, and sometimes these most colorful of people who have shared our moments. I like that part. Which when weave or reweave such brighter threads into the rich tapestry of our lives. So just like now, Ralfy's thinking, with all of you or the people, it's the moments shared with the right people that make all the difference. And that's what tonight's been. It's been a fantastic experience shared with you six individuals and the people on the side and the people who will see this later as they're drinking a dram and watching us. It's about the time and the space and the liquid in your cup. So again, this has been a fantastic start to our evening. Thanks to our listeners. Thanks to our panel. We're going to be back next week, Saturday, May 23rd, 7 o'clock, Mountain, not Standard Time, Mountain what's it called? MDT. Daylight time. Thank you.
Mountain time.
And this will be our second discussion about Ralfy's book, Search for a Whiskey Bothy. We'll be discussing chapters 4 to 6, indulging in a different Ralfy Whiskey of the Year. Please join us in about 5 minutes again on this channel for the After Dram, our Talking Dead style debrief where we're a little bit more relaxed. We say certain things that we shouldn't maybe at different times. And it's a little bit more, like it might, we're going to only do it for an hour, but we continue on after that. And I look forward to that hour as much as this hour as well. Guys, I tried to do a half an hour and it's 1 hour and 29 seconds. So I'm sorry.
The longest half hour like that every week.
And we're going to sign off, and I'm going to have my 2 drams, and we are going to see you in about 5 minutes, hopefully everybody, at the After Dram. Talk to you later.
You guys shortly.
Cheers.